Chuang Tzu, a new selection of a translation with an exposition of the philosophy of Kuo Xiang. Kuo Xiang was a philosopher that translated and made a commentary on the book of Chuang Tzu. Chuang Tzu, as you probably know, is one of the patriarchs of Taoism with Lao Tzu and Tie Tzu. And this book has been basically written by Feng Yulan. Feng Yulan was a philosopher, one of the most important expert of scholars of Chinese philosophy history, and he was a philosopher himself. This is one of my favorite books. You know, I have a number of books, but this is one of those that I always have with me, and I read as time flies by, as I walk on my path, and I discover new things. It's always nice to go back and read and meditate on the thoughts of Chuang Tzu, on the philosophy of Chuang Tzu. Okay, so in this let's say talk, this small presentation, I have summarized some of the important messages of that I like of Chuang Tzu, and in particular of this book that I think you should buy. And if you like philosophy, especially Chinese philosophy, if you're interested in topics like, the cultivation of life, the virtue, happiness, and a different way of looking at life from the Western type of thinking, even if it's not true. I mean, as we will see, there are also Western philosophers that are very close to this philosophy and way of thinking about life and about ourselves, about the importance of inner development, spiritual development. Okay, so the first concept is the theory of letting alone. This is one of the main key points of Taoism. Basically, Chuang Tzu says that everything has its own virtue, everything has its own proper nature, everything is happy if it is allowed to be in accordance with its own nature. Every modification of nature is the cause of pain and suffering. So in the style of Chuang Tzu, to summarize, this important concept, Chuang Tzu tells a story, and this is the story. The duck's legs are short, but if we try to lengthen them, the duck will feel pain. The crane's legs are long, but if we try to cut off a portion of them, the crane will feel grief. We are not to amputate what is by nature long, nor to lengthen what is by nature short. Yet, in the world, most people try to modify, to change the nature of things. The intention may be good, but what they consider to be good may not be considered good by others. In the Chuang Tzu books, he makes an example, a story about this concept, and he says basically that there was a golden bird who flied into the palace of a king, and the king was so happy to have it to have this bird in his house, and he started to offer this bird wine, very fancy food that, it was the best food he could offer the bird, and, playing songs and all this stuff that, the king was considering to be the best, that the stuff that he liked much. And so he thought, the bird was very happy, to be treated like that. But instead of, the bird didn't like it, and he died. And so the story is basically, what the kings was thinking was good, it was not good for the bird. Now, the other concept of this book that I think is very compelling is called The Art of Living. So Chuang Tzu says that in dealing with other men and other things, we should let them alone without interfering with them. In dealing with ourselves, we should also let the different bodily functions alone without interfering with them. The commentary of Kuo-Xiang, in some ways, rephrasing some of these Chuang Tzu's concept. And what Kuo-Xiang says, the feet can walk, let them walk. The hands can hold, let them hold. Hear what is heard by your ears, see what is seen by your eyes. Let your knowledge stop at what you do not know. Let your ability stop at what you cannot do. Use what is naturally useful, do what is spontaneously can do, act according to your will within the limit of your nature, but have nothing to do with what is beyond it. This is the most easy matter of non-action. So non-action is one of these important, is one of the pillars of Taoism. But non-action doesn't mean not doing anything. It has a different twist, a different, more sophisticated concept. Non-action means, to act when you are required to act, and be able to understand when you have to act based on the signs, and so be able to follow what the forces, around you, what the circumstances around you are suggesting you to do. Not just to act for the sake of acting without, following signs. So then, he says, when you are in accordance with the principle of non-action, your life cannot but be perfect. Life in perfection is nothing but happiness. Again, life in perfection is nothing but happiness. And happiness is the perfection of life, and need no external thing to be added to life. So these are interesting concepts that I think, we should meditate on. And then in this book, we have another chapter that is entitled The Equality of Things and Opinions. And the concept is that what by nature is good. So according to Chuang Tzu, what by nature is simply good. And as a story, as an example, Chuang Tzu said, if a man sleeps in a damp place, he will have pain in his loins, and half of his body will be as if it were dead. But would it be so with an eel? So a fish would have the same issues sleeping in a damp place. If he be at the top of a tree, he will be frightened and all in a tremble. But will it be so with a monkey? Again, a monkey will have a problem to sleep on a tree. Among these 3. Who knows the right way of habitation? Of course, this is provocative. The truth is that they are equally right and their ways of habitation are equally good. So are the different opinions in human world. So now he moves from these, into the opinions of humans, and he claims that the sages just amuse themselves with this variety of opinions, but do not quarrel with them. The wise man simply stand at the center of the circle. Is another key concept. Staying at the center of the circle to meet the infinite varieties. The sage let the different opinions alone, and himself transcend them. This is what Chuang Tzu called to take two courses at once. Again, very interesting topic, concept, to meditate, to think about, what Chuang Tzu wanted to tell us, with these stories, with these, thoughts of him. And then he moves on into another concept, the problem of life and death. This is one of the major problem, that, all the religions had tried to address, the fear of death. And the point of view of Chuang Tzu and the Taoism in general is that, we shouldn't be worried about death. In the universe, nothing can be said to be superior to others, nor one form of existence can be said to be superior to another. In life, we assume one form of existence. That is death. Death simply means that we have to give up this form of existence and to assume another. If this form is good, there is no reason to suppose that the others are not. And to follow up with this idea, Chuang Tzu says, to have attained the human form is a source of joy. But in the process of evolution, there is an infinite number of other forms that are equally good. And this is beautiful, and says, what incomparable blessing it is to undergo these countless transformations. So how we should be blessed to know that, we can undergo these countless transformations. And now he moves into the concept of immortality. Chuang Tzu said, life is the composition of matter, death is the decomposition of it. There is no immortality in the ordinary sense of the word. Yet, there is another way to see the matter. If we see things from the viewpoint of their difference, even liver and gallbladder, are as far from each other as Shu from Yue. So these are probably two towns of the Chinese Empire when, Chuang Tzu was living that time. But if we see things from the viewpoint of their sameness, all things are one. All the things are one, all forms of existence are one. If we see this fact, we know that death is equal to life, and change is equal to eternity. That's beautiful. death is equal to life, and change is equal to eternity. That's really beautiful, beautiful concept. And then, it follows and says another example about this important concept. A boat may be hidden in a creek, a net may be hidden in a lake. These may be said to be safe enough. So a boat that is in a creek and a net in a lake, we can think that they are safe enough. They are hidden well. But at midnight, a strong man may come and carry them away on his back. The ignorant man do not see that no matter how well we conceal things, smaller ones in larger ones, there will always be a chance for them to escape. But if you conceal universe in the universe, again, universe in the universe, there will be no room left for it to escape. This is the great truth of things. Again, if we conceal universe in the universe, and we are universe, and so we are melted, fused into the universe, there will be no room left for it to escape. This shows that if we identify ourselves with the universe, we can never be lost. Interesting. Pure experience. So Chuang Tzu said that to know the identification of individuals with a whole is one thing, but to experience it is another. It's a completely different story. It's like for everything, to know is not like, I can tell you everything about, the taste of an apple, how the shape of an apple, the color of an apple. So if I'm a good writer, I can give you, I can describe beautifully, basically the apple, the taste, how fragrant, the color, how juicy it is, where you can find it. But in reality, only if you experience the apple, you can really understand what an apple is. And that's the same for everything in life. Knowledge, intellectual knowledge cannot be a substitute for experience. It's necessary to understand where to find the apple, where you can find the apple, and probably, how you can use the apple. But then, to experience all this, it's important. And how can we actually identify ourselves with the universe? That's the question that, Chuang Tzu and Feng Yulan in this case was, raising. And the answer is with the state of pure experience. Pure experience is the experience in which we have no intellectual knowledge, in which we take simply the immediate presentation of things. And Chuang Tzu continues and said, the knowledge of the ancient is perfect. How perfect? At first, they did not yet know that there were things. They had experience, but not intellectual knowledge. This is the most perfect knowledge. Nothing can be added. Next, they knew that there were things, but they did not yet make distinctions between them. Next, they made distinctions between them, but they did not yet pass judgments upon them. When judgments were passed, Tao was destroyed. With the destruction of Tao, individual preferences came into being. So this is an old concept about, the past, how smart, people in the past they were. I'm not sure, I'm not positive about that. Always in all culture, there's always this story about how more profound than our ancestors were. I have problems with that. I think, it's not, I think, it's a bit different. But, the message I think is here is slightly different. It uses the ancient, but, it's really like a metaphor about, being a bit, being having a different perspective about things, about, the judgment and the knowledge. And following this concept, he talks about activity and tranquility. And he says the mind of the perfect man is compared with still water or an empty room or a mirror. The mind of the perfect man, Chuang Tzu said, is like a mirror. It does not move with things, nor does it anticipate them. So it doesn't move, neither anticipate. It responds to things, but does not retain them. Again, it's, if it's a challenge, there is a response, but the response is not changing, is not, retained into the soul, into the mind of this person. It's like, if you see, there is these analogies, like, if you see basically a boat that is, diving in the ocean, and you see the water, with the waves that is opening, but then, after the boat is passed, after a while, the water becomes calm again. So that's how the mind of the perfect man should work. Therefore, he's able to deal successfully with things, but is not affected. And Guo Xiang, on this topic, he made his commentary, and he said, when the perfect man is active, is like heaven. When tranquil, is like earth. When he's doing something, he's like flowing water. When he's doing nothing, is like a silent abyss. So there is a difference between the flowing water and the silent abyss, between the movement of heaven and the immovability of earth, yet all these are as they are naturally, not artificially. The perfect man responds to the external things with no conscious mind, but is mysteriously coinciding with the nature of things. He goes up and down with evolution and according to the change of the world. Again, this is an important concept. He goes up and down with evolution, with the transformation of things, and according to the change of the world. So he can be the master of things and not the slave of things, and is following time without end. Beautiful, beautiful. Now, then he continues and he moves into the concept of absolute freedom. So according to Chuang Tzu, the perfect man who is in identity with the universe and goes up and down with evolution is absolutely free. The happiness of the finite things is limited, since they have to depend upon something in order to be happy. In this regard, Guo Xiang said, to chariot on the normality of the universe is to follow the nature of things. To ride on the transformation of the 6 elements is to make excursion in the road of change and evolution. If one is going on like this, where can one get the end? One will chariot on whatever one meets. What will one have to depend upon? This is the happiness and freedom of the perfect man, who unites his own self with its other. So the perfect man identifies himself with the universe and follows the nature of things. Chuang Tzu concludes saying, the perfect man has no self. The spiritual man has no achievement. The sage has no name. They have no achievement and no name because they let everything do its own work and have its own name. And again, this concept about, in this book, Feng Yulan that is not only a scholar of traditional Chinese philosophy, but is also a scholar of Western philosophy. He makes an analogy between the Taoistic philosophy and Spinoza philosophy. And so basically he says that the perfect man is he who has the intellectual love of God. So that's what Spinoza was using as an expression, the intellectual love of God. I don't like much this term God, because to me God has this kind of Christian idea of someone that is resembling the human being that is up in the sky, and is treating men and women as their own kids, So if you pray to God, God's gonna be good for you. So you pray, asking Him stuff, help me doing this, but what about dogs or elephants or plants? Do they have their own dogs? The dog has black skin, or is what so so I think I like more the Taoistic idea, the intellectual love of the universe, of the forces of the universe, of nature. And this is beautiful. I mean, this is something. I after I read this, when I bought the book written by Joseph Ratner. It's talking about the philosophy of Spinoza, and so this is a passage of this book, and in these books, basically Spinoza says the intellectual love of God is a devotion purged of all fear, of all vain regrets, and even vainer hopes. The wild and angry emotions of sorrow and pain leave the strong and noble heart of man like the tidal waves leave the scattered rocks of the shore. So you see, there is some poetry. The free man is born neither to weep nor to laugh, but to view with calm and steadfast mind the eternal nature of things. The eternal nature of things. To know the eternal is the immortality we enjoy, is important. To know the eternal is the immortality we enjoy. But to know the eternal, we must forget about ourselves. We must cease to be consumed by cancerous anxiety to endure in time and to be permanent in space. In the order of nature, our own particular lives are of no special importance. Of course, if you think about the life of a human being compared to the life of a star, of a galaxy, it's nothing. So in the order of nature, our own particular lives are of no special importance. And unless we recognize these, we are necessarily doomed to a miserable fate. We must recognize that our mere selves can never give us ultimate fulfillment or blessedness of soul. Only by losing ourselves in nature or God can we escape the wretchedness of finitude and find the final completion and salvation of our lives. These the free man understands. He knows how insignificant he is in the order of nature, but he also knows that if only he can lose himself in nature, then in his own insignificant particularity, the eternal and infinite order of nature can be displayed. Beautiful. This is a beautiful concept, but this is even better. And he says, Spinoza says, for in the finite is the infinite expressed, and in the temporal, the eternal. That's fantastic. And then Fung-Yulan also compares the Taoistic philosophy, this conception, with the thought of Bertrand Russell. This is a part, that is from his book Mysticism and Logic. And again, also also Russell says, to take into the inmost shrine of the soul the irresistible forces whose puppets we seem to be, death and change, the irrevocableness, I hope I pronounce it well, probably not, of the past, and the powerlessness of man before the blind hurry of the universe, from vanity to vanity. To feel these things and know them is to conquer them. The life of man, viewed outwardly, is but a small thing in comparison with the forces of nature. The slave is doomed to worship time and fate and death, because they are greater than anything he finds in himself, and because all his thoughts are of things which they devour. But great as they are, to think of them greatly, to feel their passionless splendor, is greater still. And such thought makes us free men. We no longer bow before the inevitable in Oriental subjection, but we absorb it and make it a part of ourselves. To abandon the struggle for private happiness, to expel all eagerness of temporary desire, to burn with passion for eternal things, this is emancipation. And this is the free man's worship. And this liberation is effected by a contemplation of fate, for fate itself is subdued by the mind, which leaves nothing to be purged by the purifying fire of time. Also, this one is very, very nice. Of course, you can see here, the different style between, the writing of Taoism, that is a different historical period, and, Spinoza and Russell, that is a kind of contemporary philosopher. But, Fung-Yulan concludes saying this seeming passivity of Taoism is certainly not Oriental subjection. It is emancipation. It is the free man's worship. And so one of the things, Fungyulan and Chuang Tzu are suggesting that is important is to develop intuitive intelligence. In Taoism, and let me add in Zen Buddhisms, there are arguments for the negation of intellectual knowledge, erudition. Instead, both Taoism and Buddhism, Zen Buddhisms, they are promoting the cultivation of intuitive intelligence, intuition. Indeed, as Hegel said, the old man may utter the same creed as the child, but for him, it is pregnant with the significance of a lifetime. The harmoniousness of child is the gift from the hand of nature. The second harmony must spring from the labor and culture of the spirit. And this is a beautiful concept, because, the other day after I reread this passage of this book, I was walking on Bondi Beach, and there was this mother with this probably 6 months old newborn. I mean, and I was struck, because there was this newborn that was staring at his mom with this. It was completely attentive. You have idea what I'm talking about. These eyes, of this simple, sincere, complete attention to what his mother was saying, doing. I think she was looking at the smartphone, and he was staring and looking in admiration with this half smile, with this peace and total attention. And that's basically what developing this second harmony means, but after we have done a lot of labor and cultivation of our inner being. Primitivity and instinctiveness emphasized by Taoism and Zen Buddhism, in fact, should be that of the second harmony. With the analysis of the nature of human opinions, Chuang Tzu reached to the conclusion that human opinions are just like the noises of the wind. And with the analysis of the nature of things, Chuang Tzu reached the conclusion that the alteration of life and death is just like the succession of day and night. These conclusions were reached as the result of intellectual hard work and not as a priori statement. These are not the gift from the hand of nature, like in the kid, but the labor and culture of the spirit. Very important concepts. Okay, we are basically at the end. This is the last concept that I would like to share with you. This is a slide that I put together by rephrasing, adding some concepts to all Veda scripture. I think that the art of cultivating the spirit, because that's the important stuff for human beings. It's to become, as Chuang Tzu said, melted in the universe. To be able to respond like a mirror to life, to be at the center and not be distracted and destroyed by the events of the normal life. But I think that apart from controlling our thoughts and our spirit, I think it's important, first of all, to control what we eat. Control what you eat, because it will become the fabric of your body. So this is a concept I introduced because I think that in many ancient philosophy, even in modern philosophy, this mind body interaction has not been clearly, at least from a molecular point of view, because following the nature, following the flow of the universe means also to understand the laws that are governing health. And so with the advancement of molecular biology, now we have understood, how nature is promoting health and longevity by controlling nutrient sensing pathways and other pathways that are blocking the development of molecular damage. Therefore, the body stays healthy, and in a healthier body, is much easier to fully develop our potentials. So control what you eat, because it will become the fabric of your body. Assess your thoughts, because they will become your words. So it's important that not only we control what gets in with the food in our body, but also what it gets out. And what it gets out in form of words depends on the selection of our thinking. So what we decide to think, what are our interests, how we shape our mind, this mind of our kids is very important, because then by reviewing our words, we are transforming into action. So review your words, because they will become your actions, and examine your actions, because they will become your habits. What we do day after day become habitual things. So depending on what we think and what we do, then this is shaping our habits. And then correct your habits, because they will form your character. And govern your character, because it will shape your destiny. So these some ideas that I think they are important for arguments, topics for meditation, and I hope that this has been useful, and that's it.